the truth about betrayal. They didn't misunderstand you. They didn't act unknowingly. They were aware of the impact. They understood the cost. And they chose to proceed anyway. So let me ask you something that may challenge your sense of comfort. Why is it that deepest wounds in life almost always come from those you trusted the most? And an even more difficult question: what if that betrayal was not meant to destroy you, but to awaken you? Stay with me, because today this is not about blame. It is about becoming unshakable. Betrayal cuts deeply because it enters through a door you willingly left open. But wisdom teaches this truth. Pain is not the enemy. Unawareness is. Today I will show you how betrayal becomes instruction, how deliberate harm exposed in attachments, and how true healing does not come from forgiveness alone, but from inner mastery. My promise to you is simple. If you walk this path with them, you will leave with a mind that cannot be betrayed again, a heart that stays open without becoming fragile, and a wisdom that transforms pain into power. 1. Betrayal hurts because expectation was stronger than awareness. Betrayal does not begin with the other person. It begins earlier, quieter, and much deeper. It begins the moment expectation replaces awareness. You believe it not because you clearly saw, but because you wanted to see. You trusted not because truth was revealed, but because hope filled the empty spaces. Expectation is a silent agreement signed without being read. You assume loyalty where none was promised. You assume consistency where discipline does not exist. You assume depth where convenience resides. When that imagined agreement collapses, the pain feels personal, but observe closely. Reality did not break. The story you were living inside did. Awareness observes what is. Expectation demands what should be. When awareness is present, you notice patterns. You sense hesitation in language. You observe misalignment between words and actions. You feel energy before any explanation is offered. Expectation dulls perception. It whispers, ignoreth us. It reassures, they didn't mean it. It promises, this time will be different. Expectation is emotional blindness dressed as hope. This is why betrayal feels so violent. Not because someone turned against you, but because illusion collided with reality. The mind resists this truth. It prefers blame over awakening, because awakening demands responsibility. And responsibility removes the comfort of victimhood. When expectation outweighs awareness, you ground power that was never earned. You place emotional safety in hands that never learned how to hold it. And when those hands fail, you name it betrayal. Awareness would have noticed thine. Awareness would have felt the imbalance. Awareness would have slowed attachment. This is not self-blame. This is self-respect. Pain becomes wisdom only when the right question is asked. Not why did they do this to me, but what did I refuse to see? When expectation is replaced by awareness, betrayal loses its sharpest edge, because clarity cannot be broken. And once this is seen, another truth quietly surfaces. The pain did not come from the act itself, but from where your heart was placed. 2. People can only hurt you where you are emotionally attached. No one can wound what they cannot reach. No one can disturb what is not. Pain always reveals attachment, not weakness, but investment. You aren't not shattered by strangers. You are not wounded by those you do not value. Pain appears only where meaning was assigned. Attachment is not love. Attachment is dependence on outcome. It is the silent belief that your inner stability depends on another person's behavior. When you are attacked emotionally, You hand over leverage. Without words, you say, "Your actions can define my peace." Most people are unaware of this power. They are not villains. They are untrained minds acting from impulse, fear, and self-interest. Attachment does not ask whether someone is capable. It asks whether you are willing to risk. When attachment is unconscious, it feels like love. When it is exposed, it feels like betrayal. Wisdom does not say, "Do not love." Wisdom says love without attachment. Love sees clearly. Attachment clings blindly. Attachment insists they must understand you. They must stay. They must choose you. When they don't, the pain feels like rejection of your worth. But the truth is simpler and more difficult. They did not damage your value. They touched your dependency. The more you need someone to be a certain way, the more power they hold over your peace. This is not intimacy. It is emotional debt. Freedom begins when you stop negotiating your inner state with external behavior. This does not make yoke. It makes you stable. You still care. You still connect. But you no longer collapse when disappointment arrives. The wound exposes attachment. Attachment exposes where growth is required. And thence you see where you were emotionally bound. Another realization, Beckham. Some pain was not accidental. Some harm was deliberate. 3. Intentional harm reveals unconscious dependence. There is a moment in betrayal when clarity arrives. It was not ignorance. It was not confusion. It was not a mistake. They knew. They saw the consequences. They weighed the cost. And they chose themselves anyway. This realization cuts deeply because it shatters the image you held of them, the relationship, and even yourself. But intentional harm is not the deepest wound. The deepest wound is recognizing how much power was given away without awareness. Unconscious dependence is subtle. It disguises itself as loyalty, patience, and understanding. You tolerate what should be questioned. You excuse what should be observed. You stay silent to preserve connection. And in that silence, you'll teach others how to treat you. When someone harms you intentionally, they reveal not cruelty, but imbalance. They sensed attachment. They felt hesitation to walk away. They noticed fear of loss. And consciously or not, they acted from that knowledge. This is not about blame. It is about awakening. The moment dependence is seen, authority returns. Intentional harm becomes a myth. It reveals where boundaries were absent, where self-worth was outsourced, where strength was postponed. The pain is sharp because the lesson is urgent. Life does not whisper forever. When subtle warnings are ignored, the volume increases. Betrayal is one of its loudest signals. Yet hidden within this moment is quiet power. Once dependence is recognized, it cannot rule you again. Grief may remain. Anger may pass through. But clarity replaces chaos. And with clarity comes choice. The one who to break you unknowingly delivered the final instruction. You needed to become free, for trust without clarity becomes self-betrayal. Trust is often praised as virtue, yet rarely examined as responsibility. When trust is offered without clarity, it turns inward and wounds the giver. Clarity is not suspicion. Clarity is perception grounded in reality. It is the Caragetto, see what is, not what is hoped for. Many confuse trust with goodness. They believe questioning threatens, so they silence observation to preserve harmony. But harmony built in blindness is fragile. It requires constant Each time you ignore what you see, you betray yourself quietly. Trust without clarity asks you to override intuition. It trains you to dismiss. It convinces you that patience will eventually create consistency. This is how self-betrayal becomes routine. Not through dramatic acts, but through small moments of inner abandonment. You sense something is off. A shift in tone, distance, contradiction. Yet instead of pausing, you push forward. You explain it away. You soften reality with stories. Trust becomes an excuse to remain where awareness is asking you to step back. True trust grows from clarity, not denial. It strengthens when actions align with words. It deepens when patterns remain consistent. Without clarity, trust becomes a gamble, and the cost of that gamble is peace. Self-betrayal always comes before external betrayal. When you abandon your own perception, you invite others to do the same. This is not about closing your heart. It is about opening your eyes. When clarity is chosen, trust becomes a conscious offering, not a sacrifice made from fear of loss. And as clarity sharpens, another truth rises. The pain you feel is not meant to punish, but to instruct. 5. Pain is information, not punishment. Pain is misunderstood because it is felt, not listened to. It arrives loud, disruptive, unwanted. The instinct is to escape it. But pain is not random. It carries direction. Punishment implies judgment. Pain implies feedback. If pain were punishment, it would arrive without meaning. But pain always points somewhere. It highlights a boundary crossed, a truth ignored, an attachment exposed. The body understands this instinctively. Touch fire once, and learning occurs. Emotional pain is resisted because its lesson requires humility. The mind asks, why is this happening to me? Wisdom asks, what is this showing me? Pain strips illusion. It removes the stories that once kept you comfortable, forces attention inward. Every betrayal carries information. Every disappointment reveals expectation. Every heartbreak exposes dependency. When pain is avoided, the lesson repeats. When pain is fed, it transforms. This is why numbing never heals. Distraction delays understanding. Omnipresence extracts meaning. Sit with the pain without judgment. Do not label ITAs good or bad. Observe where it lives. Notice what it protects. Pain often guards a truth you are not ready to face. It may reveal that you stayed too long, that you compromised values, that you sought validation externally, that you feared solitude more than disrespect. Pain is the mind's way of demanding correction. When you receive pain as information, it loses its cruelty. It becomes precise, almost. And once the message is received, pain no longer needs to shout. Understanding disavows suffering. Resistance amplifies it. But information alone is not enough. Knowing does not equal healing because wisdom requires action. And action begins with a single shift. The decision to stop trying to change others and turn attention inward. 6. You don't heal by changing others. You heal by seeing clearly. Healing is often delayed by the belief that someone else must change first. An apology must come. An explanation must arrive. A realization must occur in them. This belief keeps you tethered, waiting, watching, reliving. But healing does not depend on permission. It depends on perception. The need for others to change is rooted in the hope that the past can be rewritten. That pain will disappear if behavior is corrected retroactively. But time does not move backward, and clarity does not require agreement. You'll heal the moment you see the situation as it truly was, not as you wanted it to. Seeing clearly means accepting what someone was capable of, not what you imagined they could become. It means recognizing patterns instead of clinging to exceptions. Clarity is not bitterness. It is finality. When you see clearly, questions dissolve. Confusion ends. The mind stops looping. You no longer need closure from them. Understanding becomes the closure. This is where power returns. As long as healing depends on others, you remain vulnerable. When healing depends on awareness, you become grounded. Seeing clearly also means seeing yourself, your choices, your silences, your compromises, not with shame, but with honesty. Clarity restores self-respect. It teaches discernment. It strengthens boundaries without anger. And from this place, forgiveness may arise naturally, not as a moral obligation, but as a release of relevance. The past loses authority when it is fully understood. You are no longer trying to fix what happened. You are integrating what. This is healing without dependence, without negotiation, without leo. And once clarity is established, a deeper transformation begins, because a mind that sees clearly can never be controlled the same way again. 7. The mind suffers longer than the event itself. The event happens once, the words are spoken once, the action is done once, but the M in replays This is where suffering is born. Not in the moment of betrayal, Bhutan, the moments that follow. When memory becomes a weapon turned inward, the mind does not simply remember. It reconstructs, it edits. It adds image and dial, alternate endings, and unanswered questions. The body experiences pain briefly. The mind extends it indefinitely. You wake up and it is there. You sit quietly and it returns. You try to focus and it interrupts. The event has passed, but the mind refuses to let it rest. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. The mind is trained to seek control. When something unexpected happens, it revisits the moment in an attempt to prevent it from happening again. But replay does not equal resolution. It only deepens the groove of suffering. Every repetition strengthens emotion. Every mental argument keeps the wound open. Every imagined response prolongs the pain. The mind believes it is protecting you. In reality, it is imprisoning you. Awareness reveals a subtle truth. You are no longer reacting to what happened. You are reacting to the thought of what happened. The event cannot hurt you again, but the mind can. This is why time alone does not heal. Time without awareness only multiplies memory. Healing begins when you interrupt the replay. Not by force, not by suppression, but by observation. Watch the mind as it returns to the moment. Notice the sensations that follow. See how the body tightens even though no thing is happening now. This gap between now and then is where freedom lives. The event belongs to the past. The suffering lives in the present. Once this is seen clearly, you realize something important. The pain you feel now is not caused by what they did, but by what the mind refuses to tolerate. And as this understanding deepens, another layer reveals itself. Beneath the replay, there is an emotion asking to be heard. 8. Anger is an expressed, grief-seeking control. Anger often arrives loud, sharp, explosive, but it is not the beginning. It is the surface. Beneath anger lives grief. Grief for what was lost. Grief for what was expected. Grief for what will never be the same. Grief is vulnerable. It is soft. It feels unsafe. So the mind covers it with anger. Anger creates the illusion of strength. It says, I am not hurt. It says, I am powerful. But anger, grief, and emotional pain is a shield, not a solution. When grief is unexpressed, it seeks control. It looks for someone to blame. It looks for something to punish. Anger wants resolution without exposure. Grief requires surrender. This is why anger feels active and grief feels heavy. Anger demands justice. Grief asks for acknowledgement. When betrayal happens, grief appears first. But if it is not allowed, anger takes its place. Anger replays the story. Anger sharpens words. Anger imagines confrontation. But anger cannot heal. It can only dominate. Grief, when honored, dissolves. Anger, when fed, expands. To move beyond endure, you must be willing to feel what it protects. Sit quietly and notice the anger. Do not justify it. Do not act on it. Listen. Ask what was lost. Ask what you hoped for. Ask what you are mourning. Often it is not the person you miss, but the future you imagined. Grief is honest. Anger is strategic. When grief is felt fully, anger loses its purpose. Control is no longer needed. When acceptance is present, and as anger softens, a dangerous temptation appears. The urge to forgive too quickly, to escape discomfort. 9. Forgiveness without understanding is suppression. Forgiveness is often praised, but many forgive to appear healed. Many forgive to avoid conflict. Many forgive to escape pain. But forgiveness without understanding does not free it buries the wound. Suppression wears the mask of peace. It smiles. It says the right words. But inside, tension remains. Understanding comes before forgiveness, not after. To forgive without understanding is to deny your own experience. It is to tell the body that its signals were wrong. True forgiveness arises naturally when clarity is complete. Understanding means seeing why it hurt, what it revealed, and how it changed you. Without this, forgiveness becomes a spiritual bypass, a way to appear evolved. While remaining bound, suppressed pain does not disappear. It waits. It resurfaces in mistrust, in distance, in emotional withdrawal. This is why some people forgive, but never feel free. Understanding is the key that unlocks forgiveness. It requires honesty, not judgment, not justification, but truth. When you understand the dynamic, the attachment, the expectation, the pattern, forgiveness stops being a decision and becomes a consequence. You no longer forgive because you forgive because holding on no longer makes sense. Understanding restores power. Forgiveness releases weight. And when both are present, the past loses its grip. You are not pretending to be healed. You are complete. And from this completeness, a new way of being emerges, one that cannot be easily wounded again. 10. Wisdom begins where emotional reaction ends. Wisdom is not found in intensity. It is found in stillness after intensity has passed. Emotional reaction is immediate, loud, persuasive. Wisdom is quiet, patient, and rarely urgent. When something hurts, reaction rises first. The body tightens. The thoughts accelerate. Stories form quickly, demanding action. Reaction wants expression. It wants release. It wants resolution now. But wisdom waits. Wisdom does not deny emotion. It allows emotion to move through without becoming the decision maker. Reaction says, I must respond. Wisdom asks what is actually happening. Reaction identifies with the feeling. Wisdom observes the feeling. This space between feeling and response is where transformation occurs. When reaction controls action, regret. When wisdom guides her, she shuns clarity remains. Emotional reaction narrows perception. It filters reality through pain. It magnifies threat. It seeks defense. Wisdom widens perspective. It sees. It recognizes patterns. It understands timing. Wisdom does not rush to speak. It allows silence to reveal what noise hides. This is why restraint is power, not suppression. Restraint to pause is not to lose. To pause is to see. When reaction ends, the nervous system settles. Breath deepens. Thought slows. Only then can truth be heard. Many mistakes are not made from bad intention, but from acting will. Wisdom waits until emotion no longer demands control. This does not mean becoming indifferent. It means becoming precise. When wisdom replaces reaction, your words carry weight. Your actions carry alignment. Your presence carries authority. And once this authority is felt, another realization becomes unavoidable. Not everyone who appears close is truly aligned. 11. Not everyone who smiles with you walks with you. Smiles are easy. Agreement is easy. Presence is easy when conditions are favorable. But walking with someone requires consistency when conditions change. Some people enjoy proximity but avoid responsibility. They share moments, but not direction. They laugh with you but do not carry you when the path becomes heavy. This is not deception. It is misalignment. Many relationships exist on the surface of convenience. They thrive on shared environments, shared benefits, shared comfort, but when growth demands effort, these connections thin. Walking with Sumyanimians, moving at a similar pace toward a similar value with similar integrity. Smiling requires nothing. Walking requires commitment. This is why disappointment often arrives. You assumed companionship. They assumed coincidence. Wisdom observes behavior over time, not words, not promises, patterns. Who shows up when nothing is, who remains when celebration ends, who respects your boundaries without resistance. These answers, error reeled slowly. Not everyone who stays near is meant to go far. This realization is painful only when expectation is attached. When clarity is present, selection becomes natural. You stop forcing alignment. You stop convincing. You stop explaining. You allow distance without resentment. This is maturity. It is not rejection. It is. Once you accept that not all connections are meant for the same journey, a third question arises. How do you remain open without becoming vulnerable to repeat? 12. Detach from expectation, not from humanity. Detachment is it is mistaken for coldness, for withdrawal, for indifference. But true detachment doesn't disconnect you from people. It disconnects you from illusion. To detach from expectation is to release the demand that others fulfill them. It is to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. Expect that. Ion creates pressure. Pressure distorts relationship. It asks people to perform instead of to be. When expectation dissolves, presence remains. You listen without agenda. You give without keeping score. You connect without clinging. This is freedom. Detachment does not reduce love. It refines it. Love without expectationless. It breathes. It allows difference. You still care. You still feel. But your peace is no longer negotiated. You stop trying to extract certainty from others. This is where dignity returns. When expectation is released, disappointmentless, its grip. You see clearly who someone is today, not who they could become tomorrow. This does not harden the heart. It strengthens discernment. Humanity is embraced. Illusion is released. You allow people to be flawed without making their flaws your burden. And from this place, connection becomes choice, not necessity. This is the balance. Open but not dependent. Kind but not naive. Present but not attached. And when this balance is embodied, thefanal transformation begins. Because a person who lives this way can no longer be betrayed in the same way again. 13. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are often misunderstood as rejection, as distance, as punishment. But true boundaries are none of these things. They are clarity made visible. A wall is built from fear. A boundary is built from awareness. Walls are rigid. They shut everything out. Boundaries are flexible. Death, I allow what aligns and stop what harms. When boundaries are absent, confusion grows. When confusion grows, resentment follows, and resentment silently poisons connection. Many people avoid boundaries because they fear being misunderstood. They fear conflict. They fear being seen as difficult or cold. So they remain silent. They tolerate discomfort. They allow small violations to pass unnoticed. But every ignored boundary teaches others how to treat you. Clarity spoken early prevents pain felt later. A boundary does not demand, it declares. It does not control others, it defines you. When you say no with clarity, you are not rejecting the other person. You are honoring your limits. Boundaries protect energy. They maintain. Without boundaries, generosity becomes. Without boundaries, patience becomes self-neglect. Clarity allows relationships to breathe. Everyone knows where they stand. Expectations are grounded. Resentment has no soil to grow in. Boundaries do not end connection. They refine it. Those who respect Yah will respect your boundaries. Those who resist them reveal their intentions. This revelation is not loss. It isn't. Once boundaries are established, you begin to see who values access and who values alignment. And when this clarity settles, you begin to understand something deeper. Sometimes the people who hurt you most were never meant to stay, but to teach. 14. The one who hurt you. Exposed your next level of growth. Painful encounters often feel like setbacks, like interruptions, like unfair detours on a clear path. But growth rarely announces itself gently. It arrives disguised as disruption. The person who hurt you did not appear by accident. They entered your life at the precise moment a lesson was ready to surface. This does not excuse harm. It explains its purpose. Every challenge reveals a threshold. Every wound points to an edge where strength must be developed. Without pressure, capacity remains unknown. The one who hurt you forced you to confront boundaries you had not defined, values you had not defended, needs you had not honored. They exposed tolerance where dissent was required, hope where realism was needed, attachment where independency was necessary. Growth begins where comfort ends. If everything had remained pleasant, the same patterns would have continued. The same compromises, theism silence, pain interrupted repetition. The lesson is not in their suffering, but in the response. Do you shrink or do you refine? Do you close or boundaries, strength and detachmento, you clarify? The person who hurt you activated a deeper awareness. They challenged the version of you that accepted less than alignment. This is not spiritual justification. It is evolutionary truth. Every stage of growth requires the collapse of a previous self, and collapse feels like loss. But what feels like loss is often limitation, dissolving. When the lesones integra ted, gratitude replaces resentment, not for pain, but for the expansion it triggered. You no longer ask, why did this happen to me? You ask, what did this prepare me for? And once this preparation is recognized, a final refinement emerges. Strength that does not harden the heart. 15. Strength is remaining kind without remaining naive. True strength is subtle. It does not announce itself. It does not need. Strength is remaining open after being hurt without abandon. Naivety trusts without observation. Cynicism distrusts without. Strength walks between kindness without awareness, invites exploitation. Awareness without kindness breeds isolation. Strength integrates both. You do not punish the world for the actions of a few. You do not close your heart to. You protect it with clarity. Kindness becomes intentional. It is offered, not. It flows with discernment. You no longer assume goodness blindly, but you do not assume harm either. You observe. You listen. You allow time to reveal truth. Strength does not rush intimacy. It allows trust to earn depth. You remain compassionate without surrendering. This balance is rare and powerful. It allows you to move through the world without armor, yet without wounds defining you. You forgive without forgetting lessons. You care without dependency. You engage without attachment. Strength is calm, measured, present, and when strength is embodied this way, the final transformation brings quietly because a person who lives like this no longer attracts the same pain nor responds to it the same way. 16. Healing is reclaiming inner authority. Healing is not becoming who you were before the wound. It is becoming who you were meant to be after awareness arrives. Inner authority is. It is not control over others. It is command over your inner world, before betrayal, before pain, before loss. Authority was often misplaced, handed over quietly, delegatude. You waited for permission to feel safe. You waited for validation to feel worthy. You waited for behavior to change before allowing peace to return. This waiting weakened you. Healing begins the moment you stop waiting. Inner authority is reclaimed when your emotional state no longer depends on external compliance. It is the shift from reaction to response, from dependence to discernment, from hoping to knowing. Authority does not shout. It settles. It shows up as calm where chaos once lived, as steadiness where urgency once ruled, as silence where explanation once. When inner authority is absent, others define your rhythm. Their moods dictate your peace. Their choices decide your worth. This is not vulnerability, it is displacement. To reclaim authority, you must first see where it was surrendered. Notice where you abandoned your truth to preserve connection. Notice where you ignored a discomfort. Notice where you stayed silent to remain accepted. Each moment of self-abandonment was an unconscious trade. approval in exchange for alignment, belonging in exchange for healing reverses this trade. Authoritarians, when you choose alignment, even if it costs familiarity, this choice is quiet. It happens internally long before behavior changes externally. You stop explaining yourself, those who are committed to misunderstanding. You stop negotiating boundaries with those who benefit from their absence. Inner authority does not seek consensus. It seeks coherence. You begin to move differently, speak differently, pause where you once reacted. People notice. Some feel it, others feel exposed. Authority disrupts dynamics that relied in your compliance. This is why healing can feel lonely at first, not because you lost connection, but because you outgrew distortion. Authority requires solitude, no isolation, but inner solitude. A space where your thoughts are heard, where your emotions are acknowledged, where your values are protected. This space becomes your ground. From here, decisions are made without desperation, without fear of abandonment, without the need to be chosen. You choose yourself first, not selfishly, responsibly. Because only from inner authority can you meet others as equals, not as. Authority restores timing. You no longer rush intimacy. You allow trust to unfold naturally. You listen more than you explain. You observe more than you assume. This is not guardedness. It is wisdom. When inner authority is reclaimed, you no longer ask, why did they do this, Tom? You ask, what does this require of me? Now, this question changes everything. It turns pain into instruction. It turns loss into orientation. It turns endings into thresholds. Authority also transforms forgiveness. You no longer forgive to be free. You forgive because freedom is already established. You no longer seek closure, clarity has replaced it. Your energy returns home. This is the deepest healing. Not repair, but reclamation. You stop outsourcing safety. You stop outsourcing worth. You stop outsourcing. Inner authority makes you self-led. From this place, you can love deeply without losing yourself. You can engage fully without attachment to outcome. You can stand alone without feeling lonely. This is wholeness. Healing is not forgetting what happened. It is no longer being governed by it. The past loses influence when authority is. Triggers soften. Patterns dissolve. Reactivity fades. You respond from choice, not conditioning. Inner authority also changes how you are, not because you demand respect, but because you embody it. Your presence communis boundaries before words are spoken. You become selective without arrogance, open without exposure. Authority teaches you that access is earned through consistency, not granted through proximity. This discernment protects your peace without isolating your heart. Healing matures here. No longer dramatic, no longer urgent, no longer reactive. It becomes embodied. You walk differently. Your pace steadies. Your gaze softens. Others feel it. Some are drawn to it. Some retreat from it. Both responses are. Authority does not cling. It allows. You no longer chase understanding. Those aligned will understand without effort. Those misaligned will reveal themselves through resistance. You stop correcting. You stop convincing. This conserves energy. Healing is energy returned. The more authority you reclaim, the less explanation you require. Your inner world becomes ordered. Your outer world reflects it. chaos loses access. This does not mean life becomes painless. It means pain no longer dominates. You feel it fully, but it does not define you. You experience loss, but you do not collapse. Authority creates resilience. With this balance is rare. It is forged through awareness, refined through pain, and stabilized through practice. Inner authority is not claimed in. It is reinforced daily through choices, through pauses, through honoring intuition. Each alignation strengthens it. Each self-respecting boundary fortifies it. Each moment you listen inward before reacting outward anchors it. Deeper, eventually, authority becomes natural. You do not think about it. You live it. This is when healing completes its cycle. Not when the piest no longer hurts, but when it no longer leads. And as inner authority settles fully, a final realization approaches quietly. The mind that governs itself cannot be controlled by betrayal again. 17. When you stop needing validation, betrayal loses power. Validation is subtle. It rarely announces itself as dependence. It disguises itself as connection, as recognition, as being seen. But beneath it lives a quiet anger, the hunger to be confirmed by something outside yourself. When validation is needed, power is already misplaced. You may not notice it at first. It shows up as waiting for messages, as rereading words for tone, as replaying conversations to see if you were enough, as adjusting yourself slightly so you remain accepted. This is not weakness. It is conditioning from early life. Approval becomes safety. Praise becomes direction. Rejection becomes threat. So the nervous system learns to scan, to adapt, to please. Validation becomes a currency. And wherever currency exists, power flows. When you need validation, others unknowingly hold leverage. They may not intend to harm. They may not even be aware. But the imbalance exists. Betrayal hurts deeply only when approval was part of the bond. If their opinion could lift you, it could also break you. This is why the same action from one person devastates you while from another it barely registers. The wound reveals where authority was sat. Validation seeking ties your worth to behavior. You can OT control. It places your emotional stability in unstable hands. This is the root of betrayal's power. When validation is withdrawn, the mind panics. It scrambles for explanation. It searches for what was done wrong. It turns inward with blame. But betrayal is not always about wrongdoing. Often it is about awakening. The pain forces a question that was left. Who decides your value? As long as the answer is external, betrayal will remain dangerous. Freedom begins when validation is no longer required. This does not mean you stop appreciating recognition. It means you stop depending on it. There is a difference. Appreciation warms. Dependence enslaves. When validation is needed, you filter yourself. You perform. You calculate. Authenticity becomes conditional. And conditional authenticity attracts conditional loyalty. People respond to who you present, not who you are. This is exhausting. When validation is released, something profound happens. Your nervous system relaxes. Your expression becomes clean. Your silence becomes comfortable. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop defending your choices. You healing authority and inner power stop justifying your feelings. Not because you are closed, but because you are anchored. Anchoring happens. You begin to listen to your own signals. You trust your discomfort. You ignore your enthusiasm. You respect your limits. Inner feedback replaces This shift is quiet but radical. When you no longer need validation, betrayal loses its grip. Because betrayal requires investment in another's perception. If their approval is not needed, their withdrawal cannot destabilize you. This does not make you immune to pain. It makes pain precise. You may feel disappointment. You may feel sadness, but you do not feel collapse. Your identity remains intact. The mind no longer asks, "What is wrong with me?" It asks, "What is true here?" Truth is grounding. Validation seeking creates distortion. It encourages you, Tonya, red flags, to excuse misalignment, to stay silent when something feels wrong. Why? Because speaking truth risks losing approval. When validation is no longer needed, truth becomes safe. You speak earlier, you pause sooner. You step back without guilt. Boundaries strengthen naturally. You no longer tolerate inconsistency to maintain connection. Connection becomes selective, not scarce. This is empowerment without aggression. People sense it. Some feel relieved. They no longer need to manage your reactions. Others feel unsettled. They can no longer influence you through approval. Both responses are revealing. Betrayal often occurs when influence is threatened. When someone realizes they can no longer control you emotionally, the dynamic shifts. This shift is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is alignment. When validation is internalized, your value no longer up for debate. This does not inflate ego. It dissolves it. Ego needs applause. Wholeness does not. You become less reactive to praise and less wounded by criticism. Feedback becomes information, not identity. This neutrality is powerful. It allows growth without self. It allows correction without shame. Validation seeking resists correction best. It feels like rejection. Inner validation welcomes correction because it serves refinement. You stop proving. You start embodying your energy. You'll become slower to attach, quicker to observe, more willing to walk away. Not dramatically, quietly. This quiet confidence is misunderstood by some. They mistake it for distance. But it is presence without hunger. When validation is no longer needed, relationships reorganize. Some fall away. They were built on performance. Others deepen. They were built on truth. This sorting is natural. Betrayal loses power because your sense of self is no longer negotiable. The pain of loss still exists, but it does not You grieve without self-doubt. You reflect without self-blame. This is maturity. Validation seeking keeps you young emotionally, always looking outward for permission. Inner validation marks adulthood of desperate. You become self. Your decisions align with values. Note, your silence is chosen, not forced. Your kindness is offered, note. When validation dissolves, freedom expands. You are no longer afraid to be. You are no longer anxious about being replaced. You are no longer dependent on being chosen. You choose. This choice is felt internally first. You wake up less heavy. You breathe a deep. Your body relaxes in social spaces. There is nothing to earn. Betrayal loses power because it feeds on insecurity. When insecurity dissolves, betrayal starves. This does not mean people stop disappointing you. It means disappointment does not define you. Use behavior clearly. You adjust accordingly. You move on without bit. This is sovereignty. Validation, once outsourced, returns home. Your nervous system learns a new pattern. Safety is internal. Worth is inherent. This retraining takes time. Gentleness is required. You will notice old habits, the urge to check, to wait, to seek reassurance. When this happens, pause, return inward, ask what you are actually feeling. Acknowledge it without judgment. SELF. Validation is not affirmation. It is. You recognize your experience as valid without needing consensus. This practice accumulates over time. The need for validation weakens. You stand more firmly in yourself, and when betrayal appears, beginner's life inevitably presents contrast. It arrives without the same force. It becomes information, not devastation. You thank it silently, adjust, and this is the power reclaimed. And as validation fully releases its hold, another truth becomes visible. The mended self, once stabilized, cannot be wounded in the same way again. 18. The awakened mind cannot be wounded, only informed. The awakened mind does not live in reaction. It lives in recognition. This does not mean it is numb. It does not mean it feels less. It means it understands more. Before awakening, the mind interprets every experience personally. Every action feels targeted. Every betrayal feels like an attack on identity. But awakening changes the lens. The awakened mind no longer asks, why is he's happening to me? It asks, Shat, is this showing me? This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Wounding requires identification. It requires the belief that what happened defines who you are. That someone's behavior has authority over your inner state. The awakened mind releases this belief. It understands Shat people act from their level of awareness, from their fears, from their conditioning, from their limitations. This understanding does not excuse behavior. It contextualizes it. When context replaces confusion, pain loses its sharpest edge. The awakened mind still feels impact. It still registers loss, but it does not collapse into it. It experiences sensation without story, emotion without identity attachment. This is why it cannot be wounded in the same way again. A wound requires resistance. It requires clinging to how things should have been. The awakened mind accepts what is without surrender. Acceptance is not agreement. It is clarity without inner conflict. When something painful occurs, the awakened mind notices the response arising. Tightness, heat, sadness, anger. But it does not become these sensations. It observes them. This observation creates space. And in space, the event becomes information. Information about boundaries, about timing, about truth. Information refines his awareness. The awakened mind is his pain as data, not as proof of unworthiness. This is the final liberation because when nothing threatens your worth, nothing can truly harm you. The awakened mind understands and it knows that relationships change, people evolve, or remain static. Paths diverge. Loss is not failure, it is movement. This understanding removes bitterness. Bitterness arises when reality resists. Awakening releases expectation. The mind becomes fluid, responsive, grounded. It no longer clings to roles, titles, or outcomes. It engages fully, but it does not grasp. This is strength beyond defense. The awakened mind is not armored. Armor implies fear. It is transparent yet stable. It allows experience to pass through without leaving residue. This does not mean memory disappears. It means memory no longer controls. The past is seen clearly without emotional charge. This clarity brings compassion, not naive compassion, informed compassion. Compassion that sees suffering in others without absorbing it. This is why the awakened mind does not seek revenge. Not because it is morally superior, but because revenge no longer makes sense. Revenge assumes injury. Awakening sees misalignment. You do not punish a storm. You prepare the awakened mind differently next time. The awakened mind becomes strategic, not reactive. It chooses distance when necessary. It chooses engagement when aligned. Nothing is forced. There is no urgency to be understood. No desperation to be. Silence becomes comfortable. The need to explain dissolves because clarity isn't. This is peace that does not depend on circumstance. The awakened mind also understands itself. It sees how attachment formed, how dependency developed, how expectation blinded perception. This self-seeing is gentle. There is no self-blame, only learning. Learning integrated becomes wisdom. Wisdom bodied becomes presence. Presence changes how others interact with you. Some feel safe, some feel exposed, some feel challenged. All reactions are informative. The awakened mind does not personalize. It understands that others respond to their own inner state. This understanding creates freedom. You are no longer busy managing impressions. You are no longer exhausted by performance. You show up as you are. If that resonates, connection deepens. If it doesn't, separation is peaceful. No drama, no collapse, just movement. The awakened mind does not chase meaning. It recognizes it in every experience, even betrayal, especially betrayal. Because a betrayal accelerates awakening. It strips illusion quickly. It reviles attachment forcefully. It demands clarity. Without awakening, betrayal. With awakening, betrayal. This does not make pain desirable. It makes it useful. The awakened mind respects pain. Without worshipping it, it does not linger unnecessarily. Once the lesson is integrated, the mind releases. There is no replay, no rumination, no self-torture. The nervous system settles faster. The body trusts again, not blindly but wisely. This trust is not placed in old hers. It is placed in awareness. Awareness bones, the anchor. No matter what happens externally, internally there is stability. This is invulnerability without hardness. The awakened mind is not superior. It is simply clear. Clarity dissolves illusion. Illusion is the source of suffering. When illusion fades, peace emerges naturally. This peace is not excitement. It is depth. It is the absence of inner conflict. The awakened mind can still feel joy intensely, love deeply, carefully. Beauty does not cling. Clinging creates fear. Fear creates suffering. Release creates freedom. The awakened mind lives in this release. Not detached from life, but unattached to outcome. This is the final transformation from victim to observer, from observer to participant, from participant to presence. Presence cannot be wounded. It can only be informed. Every experience adds, every challenge sharpens discernment. Life becomes a teacher, not an enemy. And from this place, nothing is wasted. Pain becomes precision. Loss becomes orientation. Endings become thresholds. The awakened mind walks forward without carrying the past on its back. Memory exists, but it is light. The future is approached without anxiety. The present is fully inhabited. This is freedom. Not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of inner resistance. The awakened mind rests sheer, alert, open, unburdened. And in this state, betrayal loses its final illusion because nothing out. Has the authority to define what lives within. The journey through betrayal and healing does not end with answers. It ends with awareness. You began by believing pain was caused by others. You end by seeing that pain was a doorway back to yourself. What once felt like loss revealed clarity. What once felt like rejection restored authority. What once felt like betrayal awakened wisdom. You learned that expectation blind attachment exposes an unconscious dependence, invites suffering. You saw that trust without clarity becomes self-betrayal. That pain is instruction, not punishment. And that healing begins the moment you stop trying to change others. You discovered how the mind prolongs suffering, how anger masks grief, and why forgiveness, without understandingly, buries wounds. You learned that wisdom waits beyond reaction, that not all who smile walk beside you, and that detachment from expectation does not require detachment from humanity. You understood that boundaries are clarity, not walls, that those who hurt you revealed the next level of your growth, and that true strength is kindness guided by You reclaimed inner authority, released the need for validation, and watched betrayal lose its power. And finally, you arrived here, where the mind no longer collapses under experience, where pain informs but does not define, where awareness stands unshaken. This is not a destination. It is a way of being. You do not leave hardened. You leave far grounded. You do not leave guarded. You leave clear. You do not leave untouched by life. You leave untouched by illusion. From this place, you can love deeply without losing yourself. You can trust wisely without surrendering awareness. You can walk forward without dragging the past behind you. Nothing that happened was wasted. Everything refined you. And now whatever comes next will meet a mind that sees clearly, a heart that remains open, and a presence that cannot be broken, only informed.